Assassin's Creed Origins was released on October 27, 2017, roughly 2 years ago. It is one of my favorite video games of all time for a few reasons. Quite literally a million. But one of the biggest reasons why I love this game so much is because of the way it is designed. Walking around in ancient Egypt is one of the most immersive and atmospheric experiences I've had from an Assassin's Creed game in quite some time. The world feels genuine, alive, and there is an ever-present ominous atmosphere in the air that makes exploring feel scary yet exciting at the same time. In this video, I want to take a look at the world of Assassin's Creed Origins and dissect 3 aspects of the game to show you just how good it is at immersing the player in its world. So sit back, grab a snack and enjoy the video. I absolutely love video games. I cannot picture my life without it. I don't think there is a single day that goes by where I don't switch on my console and play something. I see video games as an art, and it is because of this very reason why I think I'll never be able to stream. See, most of the time when I play something, I tend to play it at an extremely slow pace. I tend to get lost in the world and spend countless hours with my HUD switched off just roaming, taking in everything that the developers wanted me to see or find. Something as simple as a waterfall can keep me busy for hours. Half the time I'm just admiring a game, doing things such as walking to my objectives instead of running, or not doing anything but standing still for a few minutes so that I can take in the beautiful sights that draw my attention. And I'm pretty sure that would be extremely annoying for the people who's trying to watch my stream. I mean, even I would get annoyed at watching something like this. Because of this, the way that I tend to lose myself in video games, I tend to be extremely selective and picky with the games I play. Obviously, story, or rather a great single player experience, always comes first for me, but something that I truly value, that I believe every game should strive for, is immersion. I love open world games that go the extra mile to convince the player that the world he or she is exploring is real, has depth to it, and isn't just an empty vessel that perhaps look like a living and breathing world, but in reality is anything but that. Games like Red Dead Redemption 2 is what gets me excited. Sure, not every single game out there can be one, but I sure appreciate the games that value the same things that games like Red Dead Redemption 2 does. When I first played Assassin's Creed Origins and noticed that the game paid a lot of attention to those kind of things, I was immediately hooked. Okay, let me just get this out of the way. Assassin's Creed Origins is no Red Dead Redemption 2, but the game has minor instances where it pays great attention to detail, just like Rockstar does with most of their games. Let's take a look at the cities and regions in Assassin's Creed Origins, for example. Have you ever noticed how every city and region in the game has its own theme song? When exploring Cyrene or synchronizing a viewpoint in that region, the song Winds of Cyrene plays by Sarah Sashner, whereas in Siwa, a completely different song will play when you explore it. This is done for most of the cities and regions in the game, and it is important because it helps make each region feel truly unique, giving it a different tone and theme through the use of music. We all know how music can evoke a particular emotion, and so this is a really smart move by the developers. Not only does each region in Origins look different visually and have its own theme song, but cultures and NPCs in each city also differ from one another depending on where you are on the map. The NPCs in Siwa, for example, who are mostly Egyptian, behave, look, dress and speak differently than the NPCs who roam the city of Cyrene, which is primarily dominated by Greeks and Roman soldiers. Egyptians speak Egyptian, Greeks speak only in Greek, and Romans speak Romanian, which is a great way of portraying the different cultures in the game, making it feel vast and rich with variety. Even the architecture and design of each city is different. For example, the architecture and design of the buildings in Alexandria vastly differ from the houses and buildings in Siwa. And it is all of these elements that are applied to each region that greatly improve immersion. It makes the world believable, and it shows that Origins values quality and attention to detail. It gives the world some depth and helps convince the player that each region is in fact different from the one he or she visited before. The sheer amount of random encounters and events that take place in Red Dead Redemption 2 still blows my mind. Rockstar is just on another level when it comes to their video games. They always seem to blow it out of the park and leave you wondering just how realistic and alive are these damn worlds that they create. Look, I don't think there is any studio that can compete with an open world created by Rockstar. However, one can definitely admire those studios that try. I love it when a company has a limited amount of resources but still manage to come up with creative ways to make their world feel alive and like there is actually stuff happening in it. Origins is one of those games that really impressed me. I love the fact that it came up with a pretty creative feature to make the world feel interesting and alive, relying on something similar to random encounters but implemented in a different way. The feature I'm talking about is Origins' environmental storytelling. Throughout all of Egypt, the player can come across little notes that are revealed by activating his or her animus pulse. These notes are usually marked with a blue flickering triangle. Essentially what these notes do is they reveal something important about the world, story, or some random event that took place somewhere in Egypt. Sometimes they even add some context to the main story and to some of the question marks on the map as to why they exist. Now, for me to demonstrate just how brilliant this feature is, I'm going to have to compare it with a game where this feature wasn't present. The perfect example being Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Ubisoft's latest entry in the Assassin's Creed franchise. If you look at both these games as open worlds, you'll find that at the surface level, they are fundamentally the same thing. Both worlds consist of a set of question marks that the player has to explore to find out what they are, and then they need to be ticked off. Ticking off those question marks in Origins, however, is a lot more immersive and enjoyable than in Odyssey because of its environmental storytelling. When I was playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I became really bored and annoyed by all of the question marks on the map. They felt too repetitive, and after a while I knew exactly what to expect of them because they didn't offer anything new or interesting. Take this as an example. In Origins, near the city of Alexandria, there is a question mark for the player to find, which is a shrine dedicated to Thoth. When you enter the location, you will immediately be attacked by bandits. If you end up surviving and look around a bit, you'll find a little boy lying on the ground dead with an arrow in his back. When activating your animus pulse, the game will reveal one of these notes, exactly where the boy died, and upon reading it, you will learn the following. Turns out at this particular shrine, the bandits were waiting to rob people, hence why they attacked you. And at one point, a little boy who had been in an argument with his dad ran away from home and headed towards the shrine. His father warned him about the dangers that loomed there, but he went anyway, which ultimately resulted in his death at the hands of these ruthless bandits. By revealing an interesting story like this to the player, it makes this particular question mark feel slightly different than all the other ones he or she has already cleared out because of its backstory. It feels different because there is now a painted picture attached to this question mark, making it feel a lot more memorable than all the other question marks on the map who have no story to tell. On top of that, its backstory immediately takes the player's mind off the idea that he or she is just completing a checklist, which is exactly what a game entails, but by making it interesting, the player doesn't notice it. That is exactly why I find this feature so amazing. It attempts to immerse the player. In Odyssey, this feature does not exist. There is no context to some of the question marks, and by not having an interesting story or little detail about them, kind of makes them boring. After a while, I really started loving these notes in Assassin's Creed Origins. Throughout all of Egypt they can be found, whether it be at question marks, bandit camps, tombs, and even random locations far from everything and everyone. They are literally scattered all over the place. But do you see what I mean? This is essentially like random encounters. If you end up reading these notes, you'll see that it paints dozens and dozens of little stories that took place all over Egypt, making the world feel dynamic. It makes the world come across as a real world, not one that revolves around the player and the player only. It adds life to Egypt. It is a feature that helps with world building, and I've really come to love it. If you don't get what I mean, I urge you to replay Origins and spend some time reading these notes. Pay attention to how the game and the world feels when you end up consuming them. It doesn't make a big difference, but there is certainly a difference. The most memorable and satisfying moments in Origins for me were the moments where I lost myself in the game due to tiny little details that the developers included. Some of my favorites include the following. When Bayek passes through a field of reeds, he will gently run his hand through them. When he jumps onto a felucca, his body weight will affect it, causing the felucca to disrupt the water. The arrows in his quiver move and bounce around as he traverses through the world, and on top of that they also visually become less the more arrows you use. When you have no arrows left in your inventory, there will be not a single arrow inside of your quiver. When Bayek runs for long periods of time, he will run out of breath and has an actual facial animation for this. Palm trees rustle in the wind, and Bayek, as well as NPCs, clothing gets affected by this wind in-game. When he jumps from a cliff that is too high, Bayek will get hurt, causing him to limp for a short while. NPCs have schedules and will spend time sleeping at night and working or eating during the day. They don't just wander the world in circles. What I love so much about these little details is the fact that the developers didn't have to put them into the game, but they did anyway. They are important because they help in creating an atmosphere. They help create an open world that is both mesmerizing and a joy to explore. They attempt to convince the player that what's in front of him is real and that it's not just a video game. The way the developers handled these three elements that I've just discussed is how they tackled the entire game and every single aspect of it. They implemented elements such as giving each region its own theme song, environmental storytelling, and even adding tiny little details such as Bayek running out of breath because they had one goal in mind: to make the game as immersive and believable as possible. This is important because it allows players to become lost in the world. And once players become immersed in your game, they end up playing it for longer periods of time. Immersion allows them to forget about quests and objectives and gives them an urge to want to explore and take in the world that was created for them. I mean, even after I completed everything that Origins had to offer, I still wanted to play it because of how mesmerizing and distinctive its atmosphere is. It just shows that immersion is important. Atmosphere is important. It doesn't matter how many quests a game has or how good they are, a big part of the game is spent in the open world, so it better be a damn interesting one. Immersing the player is key, which is ultimately what you want to achieve with a video game. You don't want your game to feel like a checklist or one that bores the player so much that he ends up abandoning your game. You want the player to become immersed, and I feel like Assassin's Creed Origins did a fantastic job at doing just that. It is one of my favorite video games of all time because it values the things that I look for in video games: attention to detail, immersion, and most importantly, quality over quantity.